Meanwhile, China is recalibrating. Its diplomats are striking a different tone. China has a new foreign minister, and he doesn't want to be known as a wolf warrior. Qin Gang says he wants to dance with the wolves instead. Consider what he said, and I'm quoting, "China's diplomacy has enough kindness and benevolence. But when wolves are getting in our way and start attacking, Chinese diplomats must dance with the wolves to defend the country." Let me repeat. That's a Chinese diplomat lecturing the world about kindness and benevolence. What does the statement mean? Dancing with the wolves. What is the new Chinese foreign minister trying to convey here? Instead of hitting back, Qin is trying to paint China as the victim. Instead of being called a wolf warrior, he's suggesting that it is China that is under attack. The term wolves here is in reference to the US and its allies, and the minister is trying to convey that China is surrounded by them. And this is a clear shift. Instead of a sharp-tongued, rage-induced, combative diplomacy, Chinese diplomats are adopting a softer tone. The shift began in January with the demotion of Zhao Lijian. He made a name for himself thanks to his combative approach. It earned him the nickname Wolf Warrior in Chief. And what contributed to his rise also led to his downfall. Zhao was the spokesperson of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now he's been pulled out of the spotlight. Do you know what his new role is? He works for the Department of Boundary and Ocean Affairs. It's a relatively obscure department, and that's an understatement. The message, though, is clear. The wolf warriors have been put on a leash, and the reasons are obvious. The Communist Party faces serious domestic challenges. The Chinese economy needs a revival, so Beijing wants to reduce points of friction. The next step is to revive diplomatic engagement. It began with the German Chancellor's visit to Beijing last year. Xi Jinping sat down with Olaf Scholz. China is trying to woo Europe again. Because the European Union is the biggest trading bloc in the world. It accounts for around 15% of the world's imports and exports. And China is the largest exporter of goods. It wants to retain that title. So Europe is a good place to start. More European leaders are expected to visit China soon, like French President Emmanuel Macron. And going by some claims, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni too. Beijing is making an outreach in the Indo-Pacific as well. Earlier this month, the Chinese foreign minister was in India. Qin Gang visited New Delhi for a G20 meeting. He met with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. China has tried to repair ties with Australia too. In December, the Australian Foreign Affairs Minister paid a visit to Beijing. So the focus is very much on engagement, on reviving engagement. Chinese diplomats have new orders. They're now talking to their counterparts rather than talking at them. But some things have not changed, like Beijing's animosity towards Washington. With the US, China maintains the same wolf warrior approach, and it flows from the top. This week, Xi Jinping slammed the United States. He said the US was trying to suppress China. Then the Chinese foreign minister chimed in. He said Washington should change its attitude or risk conflict with China.
The United States claims to be competing to win against China rather than seeking conflict. But in fact, the United States' so-called competition is total containment and suppression, a zero-sum game in which you die and I live.
Some things never change. Can the dragon stop breathing fire? We'll have to wait and see. The map of our world is about to change. And I'm not talking about China breaching boundaries. I'm talking about the continent of Africa splitting into two. It's being predicted now. An entirely new ocean could emerge in the African continent. Reports say 2 sections of Africa, of the continent, have started to move apart. And this change is associated with the East African Rift System. It's one of the largest rifts in the world. And this split, if it happens, like any other process in geology, could take millions of years. But how will it change our world? Here's a report.
Our planet is ever-changing, and one such major change is expected in Africa. The continent will be split, quite literally. And there could be a new ocean in the making. We are talking of the East African Rift. It has been developing for 22 million years. Yes, you heard us right, 22 million years. It extends over thousands of kilometers through countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, and Rwanda. What is this rift? Rifts are valleys or lowland regions. They form when the Earth's tectonic plates move apart. And why does this happen? Because the irregularly shaped tectonic plates are constantly in motion. In 2018, a sudden large crack appeared in Kenya. It caused immense destruction, including a highway collapse. Initial theories linked it to the East African Rift. But the two sides of the crack did not have the same outline, like trying to join two pieces of a puzzle that don't belong together. Later it was discovered that this was most likely caused by soil erosion. Now many are speculating that the possible split in Africa could be connected to the same rift. Experts suggest that two major sections of the continent are already moving apart. This could eventually lead to a new body of water between them. But fret not, you won't be around to witness it. Why? Because it could take 10 million years to fully form. And how will it change Africa? Landlocked countries like Uganda and Zambia could have their very own coastlines. If the crack in Kenya garnered attention in 2018, in 2005, it was Ethiopia which was in the news. That's when a 56-kilometer long crack appeared in its deserts. Researchers say this could have been the beginning of the formation of the water body we are talking about now. Believe it or not, this has happened before. Tectonic shifts were major factors in the creation of many regions we see today. The Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden between East Africa and West Asia were created like this. The Himalayas were created in the same fashion when India and Eurasia collided. The story of the evolution of our planet is a fascinating one. Mountains, seas, and entire new continents are created over millions of years. The next big change is coming in Africa. 2 continents and a new ocean. This story is just beginning. But the shift is clear, both above and below the Earth's surface.
Our next story is both horrifying and sickening. And we warn you, it isn't for the faint of heart. In South Korea, a man has been found with over 1,000 dead dogs in his house. The 60-year-old man starved these dogs to death and left them to rot. He said his victims were abandoned animals. But why would he starve them and kill them? Our next report has some answers.
Over 1,000 dogs murdered. Starved to death. Let that sink in. A man in South Korea killed them and left them to rot in his yard. He locked them in cages, sacks, and rubber boxes. Their decayed bodies even created a layer of putrid mass on the ground. The 60-year-old has reportedly been murdering dogs since 2020. Only now has he been caught. The murderer's lair is in South Korea's Yangpyeong County. A local stumbled upon this killing field by accident while looking for his own lost dog. The police were then called in to arrest the dog murderer. When interrogated, the man said he was killing abandoned dogs. But animal rights groups think it's actually a business, that the man was being paid to dispose of dogs by breeders. They say once a dog got too old to breed, the man was paid about 10,000 won, or $8, to take care of them. Only 4 dogs survived the ordeal. They were rushed to intensive care. 2 of the animals are in critical condition. South Korea has laws about animal cruelty. It's punishable by about 3 years in prison or a $23,000 fine. But it seems this wasn't enough to deter the 60-year-old from killing hundreds of animals. The report brings to focus the plight of pets, especially after the pandemic. Across the world, pets are being abandoned. Some because their owners cannot afford to keep them. Some because people who bought pets at the work-from-home peak have realized that they don't have the time to take care of them. In South Korea itself, about 130,000 pets are abandoned each year. Only about 1 in 10 pets get to live with their owners till they die. This is according to data from the Korean Animal Welfare Association and Korea's Animal and Plant Quarantine Agency. Many of these animals have to be euthanized. And it seems they find their way to people like the Yangpyeong dog murderer. Even when they aren't abandoned, more and more animals are being subjected to cruelty. In South Korea, animal abuse cases rose from 69 to 914 between 2010 and 2019. Reports say Asia is the worst place in the world in terms of animal cruelty. Animals are being caged up to be smuggled and transported, some piled up in cages, one above the other, in wet markets. Not to mention just physical violence inflicted on pets. Millions of animals suffer and not enough is being done about it. In India, there's a 50 rupee fine for animal cruelty. 50 rupees, that's about 60 cents. How on earth is that an effective deterrent? Laws across the world need to be modernized. Because while a dog is a man's best friend, man might sometimes turn out to be a dog's worst enemy.
And finally, it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Japan. Tourists are coming back to Fukushima. Authorities are working hard to revive the tourism industry here. It was hard hit due to the pandemic and the aftermath of the nuclear disaster in Fukushima. In the US, people are still digging their way out of snow and they're having fun with it. Some have pulled out their kayaks, while others are putting up free snow signs. Meanwhile, an Australian politician proposed to his partner during his speech in Parliament, and she said yes. And finally, women across the world rallied to mark the International Women's Day. We're leaving you with these visuals. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
And finally, should get married. I won't bring a ring out now because I'm not allowed to have any props, but it's securely stored at the moment, and I am planning, in fact, to bring it out very romantically tonight in the roughly 10 minutes between the kids falling asleep and us collapsing in exhaustion.
An Indian becoming a UK PM.
Well, it's not like that we are going to get the Kohinoor back. But at least India is on its way to the top, huh?
But Gautam sir, there's actually not much to celebrate.
Why not? An Indian is ruling the UK.
Indian leaders in third countries often tend to overcompensate for their minority handicap.
Key.
For example, Sunak's Home Secretary of Indian origin, Suella Braverman, disapproved of India-UK free trade because it would encourage people immigrating to the UK, and the majority of whom were Indians. Structurally, India and UK have passed baggage, but still hasn't been resolved. And that is why,
Ladies and gentlemen, India needs to significantly temper its expectations from Rishi Sunak. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.